James Cameron takes the reins on making a sequel to a film that the studio really wasn't too jazzed about. Good thing they changed their minds, and we got Aliens. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. It's another movie episode. This is the 24. For those people that don't know what 3324 means, it is a fraction. I guess if you're a mathematical person, you'd look at it as some type of mathematical quiz or question to figure out. It's much simpler than that. 33 is when we do a music episode, Eric, right? That's right. Speed that an album spins at 33 RPM for those older people.
That just gave me. We should have the swag to promote that. Right?
Yeah, you can go on our
something to 33 or maybe put it down on
retrolifegifts.etsy.com and you can go there and get some of our branded swag. And this way people won't know what it means either. And you can kind of explain it to them. So thank you for joining us. Go there, hit it there. If you're listening to us, a 5-star review would be great on your favorite podcast provider, whoever you're listening to us on right now. Goes a long way towards helping us continue to build the empire.
Well, he said it with such fervor, didn't he?
This is empire.
Wow, look at that.
This is empire. This is empire building. We're doing.
There you go. Right, empire of dreams.
And there's no better backs to build our empire on than Mr. Roland Arucci. Welcome, sir. Host, creator, auteur of the Ready Speaker podcast. How are you doing, Roland?
Fine. Thank you for having me again. Really appreciate it.
Great to be had by you.
Okay.
Great to have.
Oh no.
Great to have
Summer
you.
of '76. Why do we have to even? Why do we have to even talk about that? I thought we were going to talk about it. I thought we were going to talk about it. I thought stop. We said we weren't going to talk about it.
What is it? Great to be had.
Great to be had. Yes, that is it. That's exactly what you said, even back then.
And in the middle square we have the professor.
We haven't even started yet, and we are 2 minutes and 15 seconds in.
That's right.
And there's more to, and we haven't even talked about the movie yet.
That's right.
Next up, in his cosplay streak continues, or he's resetting it.
Wear my headband in honor of Vasquez. May she live forever.
There you go. He just said it all. And if you don't know who that is, that's Mr. Nick Leshy. He is the proprietor, belly up to the bar at the City of Kick blog. He just did a recent post about an exhaustive post.
Oh my God.
Holy,
yes.
I don't know how long it took you about all the portrayals of Dracula.
There are a lot.
He really just went deep dive on it. So
had I known there were that many, I probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I don't know what you thought you were getting into. There's 5 Draculas. Meanwhile, there was like 35 Draculas in his blog post. So I'm scrolling. I'm like, okay, we're only up to the 60s, and there's already been like 80. There's already been 80 Draculas. So go check out his blog. It's the City of Kick with KIK. We'll drop links to Ready Speaker Podcast, and we'll drop a link to City of Kick also. So go check that out. I mean, they come on our show to guest, but they've got other things going on too. So do us a favor and go check them out. Right, Eric? I mean, it's only right. It's only fair.
Correct. And it's always a pleasure to have these fine gentlemen.
Most of the time.
Picking their brains.
It was a pleasure to be had.
See?
We're not looping back into Groundhog Day. I'm not taking the bait, Roland. So moving on, we are actually here to talk about a movie.
Great movie.
And this is Aliens from 1986. So let's get the stats going, and then we'll kind of we'll get this thing going. This was released in July of 1986. Written and directed by James Cameron. Amazing. An $18.5 million budget. That's like chump change nowadays. The studio actually didn't even want to go that high. They were like, no, that's too much. This is a weird stat I got off Wikipedia. It made $131 to $183 million box office. That's a pretty wide swing of $50 million that they don't know how to account for. I don't know where that went, but anyway, 7 Oscar nominations, and they won 2: sound effects, editing, and visual effects. But Sigourney Weaver was nominated for Best Actress. Yep. She lost to Marlee Matlin for Children of a Lesser God that year. Yeah. So
I would say most likely due to the genre, but
due to the genre, exactly. Back
just
then,
the nomination alone, that's impressive.
Exactly. Back then, these genre films did not get that type of attention from the Academy. Comedies did not get that type of attention. It was really a one-off, right, Roland? Back in the day, it was all the hot, high art stuff that
had to be like the premier studio film, and that was it. Or
with serious actors, performing for you, to get those nominations. So Sigourney Weaver was kind of an outlier in this movie, but it does kind of go to show that she was noticed, and this film has a really a lot of different things going on it. So let's start from the start. Show of hands. How many people saw this in the theater when it came out?
You better raise your hand, Dean, because I saw it with you.
I saw it twice then. Nick?
Yeah. I don't remember if I saw it in a theater. I definitely saw it soon after, as soon as it came out on video.
Okay.
Because I was too young to see Alien, the first one. What did it come out? 79. So it was rated R.
Yeah.
And it was more horror than science fiction. The first Alien, Ridley Scott, right? And then this one, I just thought, oh, it's another sequel. But this was to show how respected it was. This was one of the ones in film school that my professor was like, you got to see this, and the writing and how it turns all the action tropes on its head in terms of feminism and all this other stuff. So that's when I saw it, and I loved it a lot. I don't know if it's better than the original. A lot of people say it is. Yeah,
we'll get to it. We'll get there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember seeing it in the theater. I think my aunt took me the first time. I think if I saw it a second time with Eric, that it had to be the second time I saw it, I think.
No, I think we saw it together for the first time.
We did? Okay.
We did. Yeah.
It was terrifying. It was a terrifying experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was both.
Not being with Eric.
You'd have to ask him about that. He may have a different perspective on that. He might tell you. He might tell you it was terrifying.
Sit next to Dean and watching it. Yeah, maybe so.
Watching me eat in the movies could be as terrifying as watching Alien. No, it absolutely. It was one of it's one of those singular. When movies get it right, and you're really in the theater and invested. And I remember seeing Aliens, and I was like, oh my God, it was just so terrifying and thrilling. And, there's those movies that you get that feeling of hopelessness, like they're, at the end, they're kind of marooned and stranded, and how are they going to get out of it? And that kind of built, when you've got good material and a good director, they build on that tension, right, Roland? Like,
yeah.
This could have been schlocky. This could have been Piranha 2, like Cameron's first.
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of it comes into play with the actors that were cast as well, because you have Paul Reiser, an unknown stand-up, really, just like in the shadows of Seinfeld at that time, and he did a great. I mean, I think he defined that role of that, that shady corporate shill. And the way he did that role is so good. He's like, he's always forgetting how he lies. What, did I not say that? No, he's doing that all the whole film. Wait, how did that slip my mind?
he was like the gaslighter of the '80s in this movie. I mean, he was just gassing Ripley the whole way through.
Right?
No, you'll just be an advisor. Just be an advisor.
As I recall, Dean, he was the reason why you wanted to see this movie so.
Really?
He was a big push. He was a big push. He definitely was.
He's like, I got to see Paul Reiser. Yeah.
And
well, you know why? Because I mean, he was in Beverly Hills Cop before this. Yeah, so that's right. And it was a small role, but he was kind of impactful there.
Yeah.
So he was definitely let me roll through the cast since we started there. So we've got Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley, the only one from the first film reprising or reprising, depending on how you pronounce it, her role as as Ripley. Michael Biehn as Hicks. Paul Reiser, as we said, as Burke. Lance Henriksen as Bishop, the synthetic human, as he likes to be called. Carrie Henn as Newt, the child. Bill Paxton as Game Over, man, Hudson.
Famous line.
William Hope as Gorman. Rico Ross as Frost. Al Matthews. Jeanette Goldstein as Vasquez. We'll stop at Drake. Mark Rolston, right? He's been in a couple.
From Shawshank. Yeah.
From Shawshank. Boggs from Shawshank. Before that, he was Drake, though. He was really a cool dude in this movie who, he almost made it out.
So sorry to see him go, man.
He was at the doorway. He was at the doorway of the vehicle about to go in and just got waylaid. So, So yeah, so that it kind of invigorated or kind of kickstarted the genre in the 80s of like the team of commandos. When I was watching this, I couldn't help but thinking that Predator came out the year after this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's the same type of thing, a team of commandos going after an unknown, unseen thing. Now, obviously, Predator was written before that, but just a little kismet there of all. This movie comes out in 86, and in 87 you get another kind of, which we did an episode about Predator, where same type of thing, unknown entity, commandos getting dropped in, not understanding what they're in for, and getting decimated.
Yeah.
Right.
But
in this case, but where Alien turned it on its head is, Ripley is the last one standing, a strong female lead.
Yeah.
Where all the males are either buffoons like Gorman, who's like, I told him to pull out, or they just get killed, or one by one they just get killed or out of commission, like Hicks does with the acid.
They're flawed. They're flawed. They're flawed in a very,
they all are
very specific way. Either immature and they're standing as a soldier. Most of the soldiers are very immature. Bill Paxton essentially plays like a teenager the way he's acting.
Yeah.
It's also a goof.
He's basically Chet. He's basically Chet from Weird Science.
Right. So yeah, he's Chet from Weird Science. So like, wow, Chet got picked up. And all the characters are very, very immature or just stuck in a pattern. And you have the main character who's a woman who's evolved way older, even though she was in stasis. But she's lived 2 lifetimes essentially. Had her daughter die before her.
Yeah. So there's the theatrical cut, which when I watched this, I went and watched the theatrical cut. I have seen, the extended cut has a lot of filling in of the backstory about Ripley had a daughter who died, who was at this point aged past her and ended up dying, and
which pretty much becomes the theme of the film, which is about
motherhood becomes the subtext. Even without those scenes, the themes of motherhood are there anyway, of Ripley becoming the protector for the child, and the motherhood of the queen, protecting the queen alien, protecting her, the continuation of her species, right? This kind of put that on its head of, and in Alien, Ripley was the last one left, but that was a different, that was kind of a deliberate paced, like Nick, you said, it was more of a horror film, or more of like a whodunit. You didn't really see the alien, so it was more about the unseen, right?
It was almost like a haunted house in space kind of thing, where you were being attacked by this monster and you can't escape, and very claustrophobic in some ways, but much more horror elements. Obviously it's a science fiction. You have the synthetic being, the android who betrays them and everything, and obviously
the first one's based on a film from the 50s, right? Isn't the first one based on another film?
Loosely, it had a lot of those. It reminded. I don't know if it was necessarily an adaptation of something that came before, but it certainly played on all those kind of the horror within, bursting out, and the communist fears and the Red Scares,
and kind of like the original thing from the 50s with James Arness, that type, similar type of stuff. So, as far as Fox was concerned with Alien, even though Alien turned a profit, there were lawsuits involved and all this other stuff. They considered it a failure. They said, as much money as it made, they ended up losing money for other reasons. And so, like I said in the open, there was talk of a sequel, but they really weren't busting out to do it. They were like, it's almost not worth the trouble. It's almost like, okay, we could do it, and this was pretty popular, but we don't really need to. They were come saw about it, wishy-washy. Until until James Cameron, who at this time in 83 is when the talk started of a sequel. By the time Cameron got on board 85, he had not finished Terminator yet. So the only thing on his resume was this Piranha 2 film that he had made as a director, which was Corman-esque and schlocky. And so Fox loved his screenplay.
And the script for Rambo First
Blood Part 2. So they liked his writing. They're like, yeah, we're screenplay all aboard. And he's like, well, I want to direct. And I'm like, not really. You don't really have the thing for it. Then Terminator came out, and then they're like, oh, okay, let's get him secured. And there was a lot of back and forth with that. He had a lot of demands, and because he had the leverage. So they finally got Cameron on board as the writer and the director, and then Stan Winston, Eric's wearing the shirt, right? H.R. Giger was working on something else. He was working on something else. He wanted to be involved in Aliens. He was doing, I forget what he was doing at the time. So they turned to Stan Winston.
Yeah. I think the only link to the original design was the derelict, the ship in the extended cut. You can only see it in the extended cut where the family Newt's family actually goes to find it. And, so that's kind of a carryover, but I think you could see some noticeable differences too. It was a different model. I don't think they used the same, miniature what a great design, what the whole aesthetic is just fantastic, and Cameron was true to that design. I mean, the interiors, the sort of skeletal structures and all that kind of thing.
Everything looks like rib cages or kind of bone structures and stuff like that, like a very organic feel to it.
It was organic with an industrial feel, and I think the textures he added to it were amazing. I know it was like I made a joke before we did this, so get all the KY jelly you can, because they used so much on the set. I was throwing it everywhere because it had that elasticity to it and that sheen to it that allowed him to just heighten something. And like you said, I mean, 18 million was a lot back then, but it really wasn't blockbuster either. It still was they needed to do a lot for what he did. All this
not for the scope. Yeah, for the scope
of this set of the set alone. I mean, that's crazy. The size of the set, the stunts required. The animatron, all that mechanical effort. I know I'm jumping to the end, but when the alien goes behind Newt in the water and stands, that's one of the most poignant parts of the film. I mean, just rises up full height out of the water as his monster grabs his kid, and you're like, oh my! And I remember watching that, going, oh my god, that is the most amazing thing I've ever seen on screen. And that's he hooked you in multiple ways, but I just remember that so vividly.
He knew he was going bigger and bolder and more. I mean, when you consider Ridley Scott basically turned, because the script for the Dan O'Bannon script from the original film was nothing more than just a sort of a B-level monster movie. Ridley Scott really put it over the top with just those two big sets. And that's when it became an A-list movie, because
and the psychological elements of it,
and he created that mood and it was very visual. He let the visuals tell the story, whereas in this one the dialogue kind of there's a lot more sort of like in your face, kind of like
there's definitely layers to it, and it picks up the pace, it works the pace, it works the intensity. You're nervous because the character Bill Paxton's character is great in it, and I think
it's a different experience. The two
they brought energy to it that
they both complement each other so well, and the fact that there's totally different experiences, but you're getting the same. It's in the same world.
Yeah, they're firmly grounded.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's what I was going to say, Nick. They're firmly grounded as tonally, not totally, but tonally, they're very different. Kind of what Tom Cruise was going for when he started doing the Mission Impossible series. He wanted a different director for each film because he wanted each one to have a different feel to it, and he started to do that with John Woo for the second one. And,
that's what I was thinking
and so on. Sure. For this was a gamble because, the original Alien film had a certain tone and a feel and a claustrophobic feel to it, and this one is much bigger. Bigger meaning like. Now the Marine Corps, here come the Marines, literally. Right?
Really opens it up. Really opens up the world a little bit beyond like that. We're on a ship, so now you have like all these, the colonial Marines come into the play. And, the first part, I think almost feels like it's carrying over from the beginning because it's a little slower pace, the beginning of the movie, right? Mm-hmm. But then it becomes just like action thing, which totally was absent from the first film. This is a military action film, nonstop.
He said as much. He says, this is a combat movie. This is not a horror film.
I agree with you, Nick. It definitely carries from the first one. Very much into that clean lines, that sterile computer lines, like Space Odyssey. All those lines were sort of in the first part of this.
Yeah,
of that detachment of humanity being just business and numbers.
And you still get some of that world building in the beginning, like, and you see they're seeing all the headshots of the cast from the first movie that got killed, so there's that tie-in and everything. But then when the action starts, it just does not stop. I mean, it's on edge of your seat.
To go back to the world building a little bit, though, that we also learn about a little bit more about quote unquote the company, right? That starts to kind of play a bigger role in the films. The subsequent films is about the company that is trying to secure samples, something. Of the alien, like that turns out to be they turns out to be the sinister purpose, and that's where Burke comes in, as he's almost like the used car salesman of they've been on this planet for years and it hasn't been a problem. No one's gotten killed yet. They had that debriefing with Ripley, and they're like, people have been there. They're like, what are you talking about? There's no proof of an alien. Meanwhile, they've been harvesting them. So there's that, there's that
great
sinister,
villain,
which we don't know about until the middle of the movie.
That revelatory scene where he turns off the monitor, that's when you reveal that he's like, I'm going to kill him. I don't care.
Or actually before that, when they find that laboratory and they find the face huggers in there, which means they knew about them and they've been doing it. So, Ripley's has enough PTSD at the beginning of the film about the nightmares and not being able to deal with it, that she feels like probably the only way she can deal with this is to go back. But she was promised as an advice, on a limited basis, and
she ends up taking control.
That was not to be either, and like Roland, you said in the beginning, the beginning of the film very sterile and very clean, and some of Cameron's transitions are a little bit less action filmmakery and more kind of directory filmmakery.
Definitely more like a narrative.
The shot of Ripley's face, and then it dissolves into the planet.
I love
that.
And
then there's a shot of Ripley where she's someone's talking, and all of a sudden cigarette smoke starts coming up, and then it dissolves into Ripley smoking that cigarette. So there was just some nice, like I said, camera work in the beginning of just kind of setting this up as you might think going into it, oh, this is going to kind of be more of the same. There's going to be a lot of dialogue, and here we go. But then there's that point once they get down to the planet and they see things are not the way they should be, that the movie kind of kicks in and.
Yeah, and believe it, even to your point of these war movies, you take the war movies from like the 60s and the 50s, and they started like this. They would always start with the planning phase where everybody was in the war rooms and smoking the cigarettes and debating what to do, and then you knew shit would just explode. Because you know that by the time you got into the second act, no one can get across that bridge, and then like holy shit, and that's like almost how this plays out too. But to both your points of that this is to everyone's point here, that this is a combat film, and it's really true to that genre when you break it down the way we're talking about it. That it's so true to where they're in the war room, the generals are saying, "Screw you, I know what's going on." They're totally detached. You have that the new lieutenant who's only done simulated flights, all but one.
Gorman,
only simulated flights. No one respects him because he doesn't do anything. He's not a grunt. Won't even eat at the table.
Don't have much experience.
It is definitely. It definitely has that those beats of a war film, of a real war film. Except now it's in space, and
and each one of the Marines is a character.
They definitely they're personalized. Their armor, the
red tag team.
On. Yep. No, not you, Nick, but the other Vasquez. I mean, people have a crush on you too, but the other Vasquez. Everybody walked out of there going, "Wow, she's kind of hot."
Wow. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Roland. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm good. I'm done. That's all I said. I'm done.
No, I was just going to say that Cameron has a knack. I mean, I think he was really impressed with the first film, and I think one of the things that he really leans into is the notion of truck drivers in space. And, you see it in his subsequent films, like The Abyss, especially with the oil workers. And you get this real sort of gritty, that camaraderie of blue collar workers working together. And in this case, the soldiers, and who's also very interested in what do troops, Marines look like in the future. And that was his, that was really important to him to put that into the film. That was like, this is my, I'm bringing this to the table here, and even the design of the ship is amazing. I was
Yeah.
commenting on it. I was like, what the fuck is this thing? It looks like a giant. It looks like one of the actual guns that they use in the film.
Yeah.
In the beginning, the beginning ship, the Sulaco.
Yeah. I mean, it just the shape of it. Even the hand, like
it's a weapon of war.
Trigger.
It's an aggressive weapon of war.
Yeah.
I think they even have don't they have a throwaway comment about other aliens they've met or something like that, or other planets?
Well, on other planets, they were with other beings from other planets.
It's a throwaway line, but it gives, again, back to the world building. It shows how far they've gotten, how they're aggressive. They're the colonial Marines. That means they've set up colonies. That shows so many things.
You know what, though? The interesting thing about that, Roland, is these guys almost seem very mercenary. It's like, I'm not getting paid enough for this. It's almost a different notion of they're not, doing it for patriotism.
No, right.
It's like they're grunts, but, it's a job. These guys might be the bottom of the barrel people that kind of end up, doing this kind of work because no one else wants to, right? And Bill Paxton was like, I'm almost, I had 14 days to go, 2 weeks to go, whatever, like he was out. He was going to get out. It wasn't, this wasn't like a big heroic thing for him. It was like a job. And it's like, we need to get this done. And let's get out of here, man. He's like, he was all for it. Like, let's leave, man. I'm good with that. Like,
you wonder whatever they've seen, it still, this is something totally unknown to them. Like they've never seen a threat like this before. And to what Eric said about the camaraderie, even though this is one of Cameron's first films, right? He filmed it out of sequence. So that first scene, when they all kind of are introduced in the film, they have that kind of bond, the actors, because they've been working, for like, I think over a month filming all the other scenes before they did that first scene, because he wanted them to feel like a unit that had known each other for so long, and, that easy-go-lucky kind of repertoire back and forth, that you could only build after being with these people through all these different missions and everything. So I think he felt if we just did that as a first scene, the actors might not have that natural chemistry. So very clever filmmaking.
Yeah, smart choice by him.
Good casting overall. Good casting movement.
Yeah,
overall.
It's just a couple of things that kind of came when watching it now and not having seen it in a while. Is James Cameron's Ripley the spiritual successor to Sarah Connor? Because he had already written Terminator, right? And it's about a woman on her own, that needs to fight against an unrelenting enemy.
Yeah, I see the similarity.
I would argue that Sarah Connor in Terminator 2 is following Ripley.
Well, that's what I was getting to. I think I think one begat the other, which begat the other, right? I think taking the framework from Terminator and then crafting the new Ripley, as this kind of like put to the test. The similar, the similar theme in T2 with Sarah Connor is motherhood. Now she has a son and protecting her son, right? So there's these themes that Cameron kind of addresses in Terminator that I think he carried into Aliens, that then he refined for Terminator 2, because he at the time he probably didn't, there wasn't ever going to be a T2, right? You got to remember, in '86, Terminator had just come out, so there was none of that on the horizon. And I was watching, I'm like, I'm thinking he's kind of taking some of the Sarah Connor DNA and the writing that he did and kind of transplanting it into this character as well. Kind of put, that it's a very similar, I got a similar vibe from it.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. Like in the first Terminator, you see that transition of the timid waitress, just probably in her early 20s type, to turn by the end of it, she is get on your feet, soldier. Like, she's carrying Michael Biehn, and she turns into this, and that's, you see that first glimpse of her. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
And I think in the first movie, Ripley was more going on instinct and trying to survive. It was almost like she was into that last girl trope that they have in horror stories, where like everybody dies and is the last girl standing. But in this one, it's like everything she experienced in that first film kind of made her, what she is now. And there's that scene where she's learning to use the new machine, whatever that is, the gun. and it's like right there you see like this is a totally different Ripley in terms of like where she's come. Like her arc has kind of taken her to the spot where she's a badass. She's more tough than maybe some of these military people, because of what she's been through,
Yeah, and so she's not going to stand for the bureaucratic red tape. She's obviously been deceived by Burke by the time that scene happens. So she's got no choice but to take, she can't trust pretty much any of the men. Either they get killed, they're inefficient like Gorman, or they lie.
Yeah.
Right. There's basically 3 types of people in this film, or an android that she can't trust. Right. So you've got an android she can't trust, an inefficient leader in Gorman.
Everything's against her.
A scumbag like Burke, and then the other men get killed, with the exception of, and Hicks is like the only one. He kind of, he's much like the Kyle Reese character, right? There's a lot of these parallels, that they form that bond also. They kind of help each other. So there was a lot there. And then another thing I realized as I was watching the end of Aliens, equate that with the end of T2. James Cameron likes to work with those metal grate stairs and catwalks, because the end of T2 was the same thing. It was in like a foundry, right? With the metal, with the see-through grates and the see-through, stairs and everything like that. So, I watching Aliens now and then thinking about his later stuff. And then obviously that exoskeleton thing that was reused in Avatar. When I watched Avatar and then walk around like that's right from Aliens. So he kind of took a lot, he's not afraid to kind of take ideas and either wholesale recycle them or reconfigure them, but and it seems like this movie was a kind of a wellspring for that. Fun fact, where they filmed the end of Aliens, that thing, whatever it was, that abandoned thing they used for Aliens, that's where they filmed Batman.
I did not see that.
That's where they filmed the Axis Chemicals.
I can see that. Yeah. I would argue that, like you mentioned, that he's using. So I would say I almost was convinced that the company in Avatar is the same company in Aliens.
Could be.
It's very connected. It could be
they're colonizing other planets, right? Right. Yeah.
And terraforming, they're looking for things. Absolutely.
And just as duplicitous and just as greedy. And there's
wouldn't be surprised if he connected them.
And now the
even in his own mind, if he didn't have
Ridley Scott, when he came back to do Prometheus, said he was trying to find ways to connect the world of Blade Runner to Alien.
Interesting.
Well.
Right. Oh, wow.
So that's, so you have 2 factions, both factions, where they're trying to sort of connect the dots there and just that world building of their vision of what the future looks like.
That would be that would be a massive universe. That would be a massive cinematic universe.
I didn't mind it. I liked it. It was shot on it, but I liked it.
I mean, we haven't really talked about the film, but let's keep going with this conversation. Is there's the curse of the sequel, right?
Right.
Make a film, Batman Returns. It was like, okay. And like Eric said in the beginning, this is a sequel that is unlike the original. Is that why you think it's so successful? And I don't know if Roland said it beforehand, before we even started came on, but is it better than the original?
It's a different vibe.
And is that a fair question?
Yeah,
I think it is. Let's go.
It's a fair question.
Let's all go around and let's each. You go first. Well, Dean, you go first.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. You asked the question, so you go first.
Wow. As unaccustomed as I am to public speaking.
Far be it from Dean to want to talk.
I'm no wilting flower. I'm going to go with it's not fair, right? I'm going to take the position that it's not fair to really compare these two, because they're so different, and different people, and I'm probably going to get something different out of Aliens than I'm going to get out of Alien. If I was kind of nurtured on the action films of the 80s, the Arnold, the Running Mans and the Predators and the all that kind of stuff, I'm going to like Aliens better, because it delivered something that Alien kind of promised, but Alien didn't promise it, but you didn't really get to see the alien till the end. And that was the whole point. It was more about the horror and the terror of the unseen. Cameron says, "Well, I'm going to deliver. You're going to see it, and he did it, masterfully with the budget he had. The other thing I was thinking, just to wrap it up, is this kind of artistry is gone, right? Because of CG, you don't have people working on massive sets like Roland said, with all the detail, the costumes, all that stuff this was all practical except for some of the rear projection. Cameron liked to use that rear projection, which doesn't always work. But that, this harkens back to those people working on films. But my short answer is I'm going to go with it's not fair to compare it. Nick?
I think it's better. I think it's better.
I copped out.
Yeah, I think it's better. And not to put down the original at all, because the original is a classic and one of the best horror movies, and Jaws in space, however people want to call it. It was really great. But you mentioned Batman Returns. That's one of the things where the more I watch it, I think it's better than the original Batman. This is the one. The more I watch it, I kind of see what. Just give props to Cameron for taking those chances with his script to broaden the world, make this different. It could have been very easy to just be like, okay, they're in a different place and we're fighting another alien. He threw in more aliens. He threw in more characters. He really upped the ante of making the heroine, Ripley, when she comes out in that mech suit, I wish I was in a theater to see that, because I'm sure everybody was cheering. They had foreshadowed the mech suit earlier on, the exoskeleton. And then, just having a kid character, usually that's kind of like a really bad, gimmick. But you really love Newt. Newt's a great character. And that's one of the reasons I hated the sequel, because it's like they kill her off on screen. But, so I would have, if I had to say pick one or the other, which was better, I pick Aliens.
All right. Roland.
I think it's fair to compare them. Much like a musician reapproaches an idea or a feeling or a concept, you can build on something that exists. And I think this is like a continuing story. And the first one definitely is a horror film, and it's the unknown, and you're terrified of it. And what Cameron did is he showed you that the reality of what you would experience if you went there was even more terrifying. So to do that well, with source material that somebody else created that might have been inspired by something else and was influenced by everything else, and the tempo is different and everything. I mean, even when you take his score, there's barely a score in it, except when it really hits some notes, and that silence just like beats down on you. You're like, what is happening? You're just walking. That's all you're hearing them is breathing and little beeps and little sounds.
The beeps of the scanner.
Yeah, so you have these little scanners, and the fact that he can make that anxiety, even though they're all around them, even though like when they start unwrapping, when they first discover the other people, the colonists being in the hive, and I know bees have hives, not ants, but once you see them all coming down, it was one of the most petrifying moments when they just all start unattaching themselves from literally everything they've been walking through, and it's just to me again, like the world building he did. It's definitely a different type of movie. I do think it's better. I think it's better to compare the two.
Two for Aliens and one abstain. Eric.
I think inspiration is the key word here. And James Cameron made this doesn't happen very often at all. I think it's one of maybe 3 or 4 sequels that are just as good, if not better, than the original. I do prefer the original because I just love the mood of it. It's more of an artful, the aesthetic of it, of just watching it and just being and experiencing the claustrophobia and the tension right out the gate when the characters wake up in the film. They're kind of at odds with each other. They're not, they're kind of sick of looking at each other's faces and like, what are we doing here? Like, right out the gate, nobody really wants to be there, and Ridley Scott really gave it that tension on set, and the actors really felt it, and I think it's more believable. But that being said, I think Aliens really, this is a guy that never met Ridley Scott. This is a guy that like loved the first film and said, I want to revisit that world. and make it bigger and better. And kudos to Cameron. It's very, very close for me. But after watching it last night, I do have some problems. I mean, as far as like some of the dialogue for me, this is a nitpick, and I don't know if this is going to bring it down. But the dialogue, like like stating the obvious to me, that happens a lot in this film, and it's I think it's a little bit dated in that fashion where the characters they're just because they're being these characters, so they're much more boisterous and much more. Whereas the characters in the first film are more like sort of reacting to the environment and they're talking over one another. It's a little bit more realistic in that fashion. But you got lines like in Aliens, like so who's laying these eggs? And Bishop's like, well, it's something we haven't seen yet. Yeah, no shit. It's stuff like that that bothers me. It's like, oh, it's some kind of secreted resin. Yeah, but secreted from what? Like that kind of a lot of that kind of dialogue. It's like you're stating the obvious. It takes me a little bit out of it because compared to the first one. So I think those little differences might win the first one over for me.
The dialogue is something you can't get lost in this film, I think. Because there are some great lines in it, but then like Bill Paxton's great with game over, game over.
Yeah, improvised, right?
He improvised that, and he allowed to stay in. But then when you have that whole scene where he goes, "Hey, check this out," and he starts telling about all the artillery in the
extended cut,
right, and he just keeps saying it like 12 times. And I was like, "Good Lord, why would the scene be here?"
Right.
That's why they cut it.
Big team of ultimate badasses were going to protect him, and yet he's the biggest baby.
And that's where you can see the flaws. That's where you can see the flaws. I think in the extended cut, you can definitely see the flaws in the script, where the edits were done for a reason.
But to bring it home, it's a brilliant sequel. There's only, I think, the only thing that matches it, as far as I'm concerned, is The Godfather. Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049. I think
I love Blade Runner
2049.
Was fantastic. And of course, Star Wars and Empire. Those.
What about
examples?
I would add his own Terminator 2. I think Terminator 2 is better than the first Terminator.
I'm going to add Arthur 2 on the Rocks.
Yes,
Dudley Moore.
Yes, and thank you.
No,
and thank you.
Are you serious?
Nick, no.
Are you serious?
Star Trek 2, maybe, but Arthur 2.
I've never seen Arthur or Arthur 2.
If we do Arthur 2, I'm going to bring in my shirt of Arthur. I have a T-shirt. I cosplay as Arthur.
And Nick is gonna dress as Liza Minnelli.
Does he have a top hat in that Arthur 2? I don't know. Maybe I'll wear.
I'm just drunk with a tuxedo T-shirt. I wear a tuxedo T-shirt.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys just gave a round robin of great sequels, so it does have. I would put, if you're going to be serious, I'd put Spider-Man 2 out there.
Spider-Man 2.
Okay.
I even like his Avatar: Way of Water better than the first Avatar. So he has a knack for sequels.
It can happen. It just tends to not. It tends to be the. It tends to be the exception rather than the rule.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. For every one really good sequel, there's probably 5 or 6 or 8 cash grab sequels that are just a rehash of the first film. The same, the only one that did it successfully was the Austin Powers series. Basically made 3 of the same film, and each one is funny, and each one is a rehash of the same jokes, but you don't care. You're like, it just worked. For some reason, those work. But any of these other, kind of things where they try and go back Major League 2 and this and that and the other thing, it just doesn't work. So, Aliens is I think because you've got a different director looking at it, right? And that was the whole thing. Yeah. Is a fresh. That's what we're getting at. Is this was a fresh take on something that the studios weren't too sure they were going to gamble on, based on the way the first one was. Usually, sequels follow the framework of the first one, right? Yeah. If that was a success, well, we want to not tweak it too much. And this was a total testosterone filled. Although it wasn't, because it was a female lead, but that whole, guns and ammo and blasting and firing and snarky dialogue and all that kind of stuff, which the first film decidedly was not.
Yeah.
Bit of trivia. What do Bill Paxton and Lance Henriksen have in common?
Birthdays? I don't know. No.
Bill Paxton and Lance Henriksen are the only 2 actors to be killed by an alien, the Terminator, and a Predator.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Oh, you're right.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Awesome. Yeah,
that's
Interesting.
definitely better than
That's
anything
nice.
I would have thought of.
See, now that's a great piece of trivia right there.
That is.
That's why
Brilliant.
that's why I wait till the end. You got to stay till the end to get like I'm not gonna unroll
use
that
your good
like
trivia
I'm
early
not gonna
on.
unroll that 7 minutes in. I'm not gonna unroll that because I'm just gonna turn it over. I'm not gonna learn anything.
That's good. That's a
You
good
gotta
one,
stay.
actually.
That's the
Wow.
trifecta: the Alien, the Terminator, and the Predator. I mean,
Wow.
that's the '80s rolled up right there. Like,
Yeah.
as far as like
Yeah.
franchises, like that,
True.
those three right there were kind of the wellspring of stuff. Let's see. We talked about sequels better. We didn't even really talk about any scenes. So let's talk about some favorite scenes because we didn't talk anything about plot really, except for just kind of skimming through it. Because there's so much great, this is an actor's film, right? Like the the Paul Reiser character. If he doesn't take what he's doing seriously, even though he's a comedic actor, he wasn't playing it as a comic, but he had that like I said, that used car salesman feel to him that was genuine. Like he's the I think, Roland said he's like the corporate shill. He's like the face, the guy that kind of almost like the fixer.
Mm-hmm.
And having these actors really kind of take even when it's an action film, they got to take that stuff. You got to take the material seriously.
It really comes across too, because he did so many close-ups, especially of Reiser, like really like this close to him. And I don't know if it's the extended cut or the original when Ripley calls, say I'm in, and he's in like the video, the video call, and he's looking back obviously to the prostitute he just paid for, and he's like, "Holy shit!"
I always wondered about that. I always wondered if there was somebody back there. Yeah.
I just paid for that, But it's like so creepy the way he does it, and that's like that little detail. These people bring in these little elements of the nervous mix, and how they made them real. Just their attitude and how they approach each other, how they sit in the room, and they're having fun with it sometimes. Even when the knife scene, which everybody always talks about. Hey, dude, not me. It's a great scene. And the other guys, Burt, was it not Burt? Was it Drake or Burt? Who holds down?
No, Hudson. Well, no, Bishop.
Bishop and Hudson. Drake holds his hand.
Yeah.
They did it in like this camaraderie sort of way. That even though it's stupid and you're like, oh my God, what the hell is that? You're kind of smiling with them because you know that they have a relationship. And that's all the actors doing that work of them. Like Nick said, they met later, but they're doing a lot of work to show that they're a team, to show that they're unique and they can stand out. Even this, I actually love when the Sarge wakes up. He says, another day in the Corps. And he wakes up with a cigar.
Assholes and elbows.
He was great for me throughout the whole thing.
He was a real DI in Vietnam.
Yeah, he was really in the military. Yep.
Yeah, so he was great. He brought an element to it that was great. And once he needed to get serious, he got serious. Mm-hmm. And I think that again, these little actor. It is an actor's film, even though it's an action film. It's definitely an actor's film.
Apone. Yeah.
I love the way they worked through that. All the bits, every little bit they did was great.
We got to mention Spunkmeyer. What a great name!
What a great name,
Spunkmeyer, get up here! Like hello, Bishop. Like he's like the befuddled, like the dunce of the group.
He's the red shirt.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. He's going.
Send him down first. Send him to beam down first if you're not sure. Send Spunkmeyer because
that's it.
The guy was he's climbing up the ladder and he grabs the slime and he's like wait, we got a problem. No, get up front. And no, there's some alien crap on here that's never been here before.
And he's trying to explain, and she goes, and that's Robin Duke, by the way, SNL alum from the '80s. So she's coming in for a Red 2-9er or whatever, like she's all
5x5
acting all tough and as a
it's
pilot,
it's the two. I was like, wow. Oh, they all did something that brought it's everybody's memorable, which is great.
Well, the thing of it is too, we mentioned how like all these the team or caricatures are they really bring it to that level, but they're good at what they do.
Yeah,
right. They each have their individual talents. Now, like Hudson. He knows how to, trip wires. He knows, he's
the computer guy.
Get on that line. He knows exactly what he's doing. That's
they're doing their work. They're not lost, even when they're trying to track people. What are you doing? I'm tracking people. They like you said, they have a role as a strength as a team, and even as they sort of like lose their members, they consolidate, and they still find their roles, which is great. And they're not scared to go at it. I mean, Vasquez, who doesn't like, Gorman, is, I never liked you, but in the end, they did something together. It's a moment together.
Yeah,
like, holy shit,
when she grabbed her hand over the grenade. Also, it's like we gotta. We got to make sure. Yeah, and we got to make sure we go. We don't want to be left alive.
Yeah,
like
right.
that was to me. It was like we got to. I'm grabbing this because we got to make sure that we go first. We don't want to be caught.
But it's again, the character work. It's the moment. Yeah. Anybody can do a schlocky moment and overdo it. I don't feel anybody really overdo it.
No, I don't think so either.
In a weird way.
You know what it is?
Bravado.
Right. And I think
I'm sure veterans. I'm sure veterans have watched this film and probably thought, "Oh, I'm watching a stupid, monster movie here," but really connected with some of these characters because that's, in combat situations, that's how they act.
Yeah, like they can bicker and complain and make fun of each other, but when it's time to go to work, they're a cohesive unit, which comes down to that scene when they first go in there. And I'm going to pick it now as one of my favorite scenes where Ripley's like, you can't fire guns in there. And it's like, Gorman's like, why? He goes, well, because, you're going to make a nuclear explosion.
Yeah.
And Gorman's like, collect the clips, flamethrowers only. At that point, that's when I started to feel dread. I'm like, these guys, they're like, what are we supposed to use?
Okay, that's right.
Harsh language.
like literally when I was at that part of the film, I'm like, oh shit. Like now, okay.
Yeah.
Now there's a problem because they don't have the things that they're good at using, which is the weapons and explosives. They can't use those. They're hamstrung at this point.
Yeah. And that's a brave move from a director because it goes against the usual of these guys. They're just fighting. It would have been enough to show them killing 1,000 aliens.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he said, no, I'm going to make them actually go down to basic elements of they have minimum of everything. And now they're fighting 1,000 aliens.
Yeah. Put them in harm's way that you believe in. It adds credibility. All that stuff, it lends the credibility factor. It lends to the joking around because they're so used to one another and they're so used to what they, that
and
they
it ups the tension.
And it even plays with the corporate thing of like, hey, there's a value. You can't blow up the planet repeatedly because there's money involved, which is a very common thing now, but not something that people really talked about, in the 80s about how, companies own the world.
And Ripley's like, well, you can bill me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, just bill me. Screw
you. You can bill me then if it's so important to you.
Because spaceship costs like $40 million now. $40 million is nothing. It's a lot.
It's like at this point, what are we really talking? We're talking about people are dead, people are dying, a whole colony is dead. And you're talking about like the facility.
Wait a second. There's still metal here. We still got a building.
Nick, what kind of scenes for you?
I mean, the Burke stuff when you find out just how villainous he is, and then afterwards, she's like saying, well, you were going to like kill us in stasis. You were going to and he's like, nah. Like he's so like, he could just lie to everybody's face. Like, I won't do it. But I like the contrast between the action stuff. Like when the aliens are coming, like they're welding everything closed. They think they're safe. And then they see them on the monitors, like where they're here, like, and it's above them, right? Just the tension. Yeah. But then contrast that with the more quiet scenes between Ripley and Newt, or towards the end with Bishop, when you start seeing like, okay, here's this robot android thing that throughout most of the movie has been very, he Lance played him very, robotic at the beginning. And then he really shows his human side. And he's one of the characters you're glad he survived, even though he got totally destroyed. Right? And you're hoping he'd come back in the sequel. God damn it.
I'll tell you, that was the scariest thing.
He sort of
his chest popped. Remember when his chest popped? Everybody in the theater thought it was an alien. That again, great writing.
Great writing.
One of the most claustrophobic scenes in film, worse than Shawshank Redemption, is Bishop going into that tunnel that he could barely fit in.
Yeah.
And he's like squirming with his shoulders. And I'm like, fuck, there's going to be an alien behind him.
And you see like where his point of view of looking down.
Yeah. He's pushing towards the camera and there's no room.
Oh my God.
There's no room to move in that thing. Like you look at Shawshank, you think, oh, I don't know if I could do that. Andy Dufresne had plenty of room in that. It was crappy water, but Lance Henriksen was in a tube that was oval. that he barely fit in, and then he welded him in, and my claustrophobia started to rise as I was watching it. I'm like,
I know that scene gets me every time.
I was getting triggered and agitated. I'm like, oh my God. And he's like shuffling with his shoulders, pushing the terminal. I'm like, oh, but that's what good, you know what? It gets that reaction out of you. That means it's good film.
No, it's good film.
He was able to tap into that for people.
Yeah. That's, I think, I'm not a big Avatar fan. Yeah. So, but this film, I think he hit his stride with, or he evolved into a great scriptwriter with this film, of hitting all those marks, changing things around that had been around for decades. And he said, no, I'm going to make it a little different. I'm going to make it a little bit more uncomfortable. And I'm going to ground it a little bit in my mind. And that's what I feel like we're getting with this film, where you're sort of like, this is how he sees the world a little bit. And he's storytelling, and he was inspired by something, and he goes, now I'm going to tell a story. And that's why it's such a great film. I mean, even though now technology, we've surpassed all of their computers by far, but, which always throws me for a loop. I'm like, why would you have a regular screen? Like, why is that computer so small? But it's
or dots to represent the aliens,
right? I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy.
But technology would also solve a lot of problems too. Where
it would.
And that alleviates tension, and then you got to figure something else out, right?
So, no, this is great.
Same thing with cell phones. It's like, somebody could just call, like you're in a situation.
Well, that's why I think Star Trek is in an alternate universe without video cameras, because there's no video cameras in any ships. They would have solved every problem.
I sometimes like the kind of low tech
science
fiction stuff, because I feel like they're in another planet, another moon, right? And I think if you have this more like modern stuff, like if something breaks, who's going to fix it? But this more kind of low tech, it's like you could see someone like Scotty or from Star Trek. They can manually fix it. Otherwise, it's like, okay, we just need a coder who can do everything.
Or it's the idea that there is higher
tech somewhere else.
Higher tech somewhere else, but in this situation, in this environment, they got to work with what they got. And
I'm with you on that, Eric. I think that's how I rationalized it a little bit.
Yeah, it's very retro. It's very, the technology is worn down. It's old. It's broken. In this case, it's broken because of the the environment, the weather. So it's.
They call world building shake and bake, which means they're like low on the totem pole of like R&D. It's your little home baking kit.
Yeah, this is what I equated to is Shatner making a cannon out of like a bamboo tree and some sulfur and gunpowder. He shot the
everything is conveniently laid out for him. The crystals are like right there.
Nick, and they had video. The crew of the Enterprise was watching it on closed circuit TV. They're watching on the first pay-per-view. It was like the first Interstellar pay-per-view.
One time.
If they make things more sci-fi, more advanced, I think that gets more dated if you watch a movie like that, 20 years later, Whereas low tech kind of feels like almost like it works, Now,
how the hell? Okay, you tell me how the hell he got all that shit in that hollow tube, and then when he picked it up, like nothing fell out on the other side of it. Did he like?
Well, he
didn't impact any. He just threw shit in there, like
he put a rock in the bottom.
Nothing falls.
But it's Kirk. It's Kirk. Yeah, that's it. There you go.
Nothing falls out.
Arena, one of the best episodes of classic Trek. Arena.
Yeah. See, we got to do a classic. We got to do a classic Trek episode. Just take.
We're going to
just to pick like 3 episodes. Pick 3 episodes, and we'll do like a 3-episode block. Would be fun.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah.
All right, let's start. You know what? Let me throw one last thing here as we round up. Aliens, Abyss, T2, and True Lies. Best 4-cycle films. Best 4-cycle film from Cameron. Alien, Abyss, T2, True Lies.
True. I'm going to go down my Heat territory and think True Lies is a little more overrated than you might say.
But, thanks.
It's a fun ride.
Thanks for coming on again, Nick. I always say True Lies was the best Bond film that was ever made. It was the best. I
rewatch it. Those are all rewatchable, which is really rare for me. They're all rewatchable films.
I think The Abyss.
The Abyss, even as a kid, I remember when it came out, we were on awe of it. It just that is also a different tempo. Really great storytelling.
That's Close Encounters underwater.
Yeah,
is what that is.
yeah,
You know,
and
so
the rhythm of it is so intense and so, and then you feel and then it made you find trivia about breathing water. You know, like it made you like.
Yeah,
Terminator. I'm still waiting for the goddamn Blu-ray. It still has never been released.
Really?
On Blu-ray or now there's promising a 4K now, but it's never been released on Blu-ray.
Ed Harris is blocking it because he hates James Cameron.
He's great in that.
He hated working on that. He hated it.
Everybody did. He put everybody through hell.
Well, I think that's big.
I think Ed Harris almost died like on the first day of filming or something.
I'm
like
sure.
Like they were underwater.
Yeah,
they were underwater and something happened and he like got stuck or something and he almost died like on the first day. So that's gonna color your performance a little bit.
I think entertainment factor and rewatchability, those are his 4.
Yeah, I think that's
I agree.
cycle.
Terminator 2 is probably a masterpiece.
Although I do love the first Terminator too. I mean,
I would start with Terminator and then go to Terminator 2. You know,
all right.
Leave out True Lies.
I think that True Lies. I like True Lies.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay. Good. Yeah.
It just, to me, it doesn't.
It's a very fine film. It's a very fine film.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's you know what? It's Cameron having fun and getting off his high horse.
It's very different from a lot of his other movies.
And him gearing up for Titanic because then he became a big idea.
Bill Paxton's in that one too, right?
He's the car salesman.
He's the great guy in that.
He's Simon.
He's amazing in that.
Oh my God! It's been so long since I've seen True Lies.
I'll rewatch.
He's Simon, the spy who is trying to seduce Jamie Lee Curtis.
It's such a great bit.
What kind of spy would piss his pants? Right when it's like they're holding him off the edge of the cliff, you know.
And that's another one I think we saw together, Dean. I remember that was a great experience.
I
thought it was a great film. Yeah, it was.
They set the whole thing up in the trailer, and then they come busting and they cut the trailer in half, and he's on top of her. And they take him away.
It's a great bit. Yeah. So
Jamie Lee Curtis is like Harry, did you kill people? Yeah, but they were all bad.
Yeah.
When they got injected with the truth serum, but they were all bad.
So what was your initial premise? The best 4 movies in a row by any director? Is that what you're saying?
By Cameron.
I was saying,
is this his best cycle? Is this his best 4? Is this his best 4 film cycle?
No doubt. Yeah.
From Aliens to True Lies.
I'd say
so. Yeah. I mean, even though he hit, the big time with Titanic and then the Avatar movies,
but it gets overblown.
I think they compare in terms of the human quality.
Leo could have got on the headboard. Let's just admit.
I got to be honest with you. Titanic is not a movie that holds up for me at all. I don't know why.
I am with you on that. I don't
know why.
Eric doesn't hold water. Too soon.
I don't know what it is about that film. I've tried to watch it recently, not recently, but maybe within a year or two. I stopped at almost not even midway through, and I'm just DiCaprio really bothers me in that movie. I don't know why.
He bothers me a lot. Yeah, he didn't do a great job.
It just
pretty.
The world.
You want to see you want to see the movie? Go watch Night to Remember, the movie that was made in the 50s. It's the exact same film. Yeah. He literally ripped that movie off. I mean, almost shot for shot. But he just threw in that love story between.
It doesn't really hold up for me. So again, to your point of the script over explaining, there's a lot of that. Why are there not enough life rafts here? The only woman who realizes no life rafts, not enough rafts on the boats to get out. It's a lot of that.
If I want to see intrigue on the high seas, I'll watch The Love Boat.
There you go. There you go. Because Gopher was never appreciated by any of the women who went out. It doesn't matter he didn't have a chin.
Dr. Adam Bricker was a horn dog.
He was a horny bastard, that guy.
He was just after
That's why he wore shorts all the time. He wore shorts. He couldn't keep pants on. He could only keep shorts on.
Any woman. Anyway, let's we're gonna wrap it up.
Oh my God.
Before we get too far
on Isaac, and don't get me on Isaac. Do not get me on Isaac.
For those watching on YouTube, I just gave him the Isaac.
That's it.
Before we get too far off Planet of Aliens,
oh my goodness!
Check this movie out. We talked a lot about not a lot about the actual film itself, but more about the impact of it. Which is a much interesting conversation about sequels and the nature of them, and the nature of this particular sequel because it's so different. So If you haven't seen Aliens, we didn't spoil a whole lot for you, so that's good. You can go check it out, and you can kind of think about some of the themes that we talked about in this film. And it was more kind of a little bit more about James Cameron as a director and a filmmaker, and kind of what he was trying to do. So interesting, nevertheless. It was a fun conversation. Always a good time. So Roland DeRucci. My eyes always go to the Dan Electro guitar every time. I have 2 Dan Electros in my living room, so I love them.
My son's giving me back the one I gave him, so okay. I have 3 up.
Yeah, put it up there. Roland, you can find him on Ready Speaker Podcast on YouTube, so go check him out. Go ahead and subscribe. This way, when he's got new content that comes out, you'll get a notification on YouTube, and you can go check that out.
You might even see Nick Leshy on an episode or 2.
Oh, yeah, there's one coming up.
What is he dressed as?
Just himself. This is handsome self. Okay. Exactly. Handsome Nick Leshy.
Oh, so he saves the
I saved the cosplay for you.
He's gonna start. He's going to start asking for a cosplay budget. He's going to want to go to Michael's and get foam and cutting out and start making.
Like, dude,
World of Warcraft.
It's my brand now. I gotta start. It's a challenge. I gotta sweat it out.
Nick Leshy's brand is City of Kick, so you can go find him on there. It's his entertainment blog. He covers things far and wide. Always an interesting subject and always thoughtfully done. So go check him out. Follow his blog, City of Kick. Like I said, the links will be there as well. Thank you two gentlemen for joining us.
As always.
Yes. Always happy to be here.
Always a pleasure.
Yep.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap it up. So for Roland, for Nick or Vasquez.
We'll call him Niquez.
I like it. The professor.
Niquez. For Nick Leshy and for Eric, this has been Dean asking you to please be kind and rewind.